It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. David Niyanzima to give this year's Richard Gush lecture with the title How the Light is Leading Friends. David was born into a Quaker family on February the 16th, 1959. His father, Mark Bikumagu, was one of the local founding members of the Burundi Quakers. David grew up to appreciate Quaker principles of non-violence, peace, governance, simplicity, care for the environment and integrity. David first came to South Africa in 1994 and has been a frequent visitor ever since, working with the Peace Centre, AFSC and Trauma Healing and Reconciliation Services in Burundi. He's married to Felicity with 4 grown-up children, 3 grandsons, and lives in Bujumbura, Burundi, where he is currently the Vice-Chancellor of the International Leadership University, Burundi, and President of Trauma Healing and Reconciliation Services. He is co-author of Unlocking Horns, Forgiveness and Reconciliation in Burundi, and numerous other essays and articles on psychosocial healing and peace building. He holds an MA in Counselling and a doctoral degree in Leadership and Global Perspectives from George Fox University, USA. David.
Tugire amahoro. Let us have peace. It is so good to be here among friends. This is not my first time to South Africa, but I'm so happy to be back again. Thank you for your invitation. Thank you for facilitating my travel to this country, which has strengthened my peace activism since my first visit in 1994. At that time, I remember, South Africa had just opened up to the outside world, and the process of applying for the visa was not yet known. In fact, I remember my friend Samson and I traveled to South Africa without a visa, and we thought that we would get it at the airport. It was not so. Unfortunately, upon landing at Johannesburg, we were told that we could not get a visa at the airport. They started to deal with Samson's passport, and finally they expelled him. They took him back to the aeroplane that had brought us from Nairobi, and they dealt with me. At that time, I had a diplomatic passport because I was the leader of the Friends in Burundi, just like any other religious organization. And then they had to be careful, maybe not to make a mistake with diplomatic issues. But then they decided I would not be allowed entry into the country. But unfortunately, or fortunately, the aeroplane that had brought us had already left. And so they had no choice but telling me to come in on one condition. They said, now you can come in, but when you return back to Burundi, you have to tell everybody that no getting of a visa at the airport. And I said, yes, yes, yes. So I came in. And I'm so happy that I got to learn a lot from the Quaker Peace Center. And I remember staying with Nozizwe and Jeremy. I think at that time, Jeremy was the director of the Quaker Peace Center. So I learned a lot, and the Quaker Peace Center really helped us a lot. They not only taught me on how to make peace, or how to involve others in peace initiatives, but they also supported us and helped us even print bumper stickers like this. Of course, this has German on it, but we put it into Kirundi. And we put these things on the doors and windows, on vehicles. They also supported our initiatives to print T-shirts, or in efforts to motivate Burundians and get on track and be involved in peace initiatives, which we did. At that time, Burundi was very, very much in war situation. In fact, Alison de Forge called it a creeping coup of Burundi. And she wrote in her article and described Burundi as the most dramatic of disasters on a continent known for catastrophes. At that time, we had like 30,000 to 50,000 people killed in 3 weeks. It was so terrible. There was great need for peace initiatives and peace building. I am today asked to deliver the Richard Gush lecture. The title of my presentation is How the Light is Leading Friends. To say the truth, I had not heard about Richard Gush until I was asked to prepare a lecture about him. The little I have read about him has very much inspired me. What was very stunning in my mind was his boldness to apply his peace convictions in relating with the warriors when they came to attack his Salem village. Why did he intentionally leave his gun and walk towards those who could kill him and his people? As he negotiated with the chief warrior, I wonder how the light shone through him and dissipated what was going to be a very dark moment for him and his people, particularly those refugees who were packed in that man's peace church. I want to talk practically about how the light, which is, in my humble opinion, Christ leading friends. Let us pay attention to the light, to what it can do and how it leads. In my conviction that we Quakers understand the concept of light more than any other religious denomination, I can say that this is why we are called, or why we call ourselves the Friends of the Light. Since we believe in the Bible, let us look at the prophetic word of Isaiah. He said in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2, the people living in darkness have seen light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Indeed, Isaiah's prophecy was fulfilled with the coming of Jesus Christ, and Isaiah further prophesied that Jesus was to come as a light to the whole world. He continues and says, I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. Isaiah chapter 49, verse 6. Matthew realized with no question that Jesus was the true light that Isaiah had predicted 400 years before. And he did not want to miss proclaiming this truth as he narrated the birth of Jesus. Many churches, including Friends meetings for worship, have used this narrative. I like how Eugene Peterson paraphrased it in his version of the Bible, which he called Message. He said, people sitting out their lives in the dark saw a huge light. Sitting in that dark country of death, they watched the sun come up. Even as we believe that Jesus came as the light, we know that there is still darkness everywhere in our world today. Can you imagine the people living in Ukraine who expect bombardment from Russian strikes anytime? People living in Hiran region of central Somalia who live in constant fear of Al-Shabaab. What about the villagers in the rural areas of Maiduguri in Nigeria, living in what we psychologists call oppressive fear from Boko Haram? And how about our neighboring country, the Democratic Republic of Congo, particularly in the Goma area? Marcy Hirsch writes in her article, which she entitled, "In Congo, women face impossible choice, risk rape or go hungry." And in that article, it's written that every day, no less than 10 women are raped. In other parts of the world, there may be other forms of darkness, such as xenophobia, racism, tribalism, ethnic cleansing, etc. George Fox saw this in his day, and maybe what he saw prompted him to search for what he could do about the situation. In his search, probably after many months, he finally got a great vision in which he reported like this: "I saw an ocean of darkness and death, but an infinite ocean of light and love, which flowed over the ocean of darkness." I do not doubt that this vision became a special and strong motivator for him to engage and commit wholeheartedly in all it could take to let his light shine, in accordance with Matthew chapter 5, verse 16, which says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds." Fox continues in his epistle 1661 and said, "And this is more than all the talkers of justice, righteousness, and holiness, those whose life denies what their tongues profess and talk of." Is it not the same as Ubuntu that Paul Holdsworth is talking about here? The collective responsibility to ensure that all members of the community have the means of substance, etc. Fox was a true believer in Jesus Christ, and yet he saw that the work of the light was not finished. He did not deny or minimize the reality of the darkness, but neither did he despair because of it. That is why he left us a legacy of being a people who believe in being led by the light to where there is darkness. I am sure we all know the reality that the American Friends Service Committee, together with the British Friends Service Council, received the most prestigious award, Nobel Peace Prize, in 1947 for their 300 tireless work in peace building. I like what Gunnar Jan, chair of the Nobel Committee, said as he gave the award. He said, "It was not the extent of this work, but the spirit in which it was performed that was so important." And I want us to underline the word performed. We do not simply only make committees and ad hoc committees. We appropriate the Fox spirit, even if it means to risk our lives, like Richard Gush. Fox also left us a belief in getting our hands in the dirt and transform the world around us. Of course, God promised to be with us in this work we have remembered this reality of God being with us about 2 weeks ago during Christmas, and we celebrated our Emmanuel, God with us. My friends, I can testify that this powerful truth about being led by the light is practical in the most difficult places of our world today. As we consider how the light leads us, let us also be aware of what the light leads us to do as well. As folks saw an ocean of darkness and death, I am convinced that that ocean of darkness and death is still a reality today, as stated above. Therefore, friends, we are supposed not only to see it, but to engage in initiatives or projects in efforts to dispel it. For example, promoting healing and forgiveness can be the kind of initiatives that friends led by the light may engage in to dispel the darkness. And talking about forgiveness, let me say what I remember reading and something wrote by Geiko Muller in the book. She said, much more than a word of a gesture. That is the forgiveness. Forgiveness is much more than a word or a gesture. Forgiveness is a genuine process of encounter, of healing, of the releasing of new options for the future. Many people today are still in the ocean of darkness and death, even if they may not be in a war situation as we know it. Some might be still in trauma due to their violent past, like my fellow Burundians, who still have a great need for healing and forgiveness. I remember on the 25th of October, 1993, when I was teaching at the Friends Pastoral Training School at Kwibuka, Burundi, troops came and began shooting without any warning, and they killed 8 of my 11 students before my own eyes. I can testify that it was the biggest ocean with the thickest darkness I had ever encountered. I remember hiding myself in a car repair pit, fearful, trembling, not knowing what I could do. Eventually, I ran to my father's house and hid in the attic for several long days and nights. I was filled with total desperation and helplessness. But praise be to God, in that most confusing time, God spoke to me, and the light shone in the darkness of my trauma, and I began to see that I did not need to be hiding. What I heard was this: David, what are you doing here? This is just what God spoke to Elijah in the dark cave as he hid from Jezebel. I remember that God enlightened Elijah and told him that he had a mission to accomplish, a mission to train or enlighten Elisha, who was to replace him. And we read this in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 1 to 14. In that moment, I was led by the light, both physically and spiritually. I came out of my hiding place and returned to Kwibuka to bury the students. For me, the process of dispelling the darkness started when I was able to meet with Philbert, the young man who had brought the soldiers to kill us. I saw him and I was given the grace to extend to him my forgiveness. That action dispelled the darkness inside of me. I was full of hatred before. I was full of revengeful thoughts. I was a victim that was like swimming in the vast ocean of darkness and death. But God's light shone in me. According to Gail Lenore notes on the seminar on trauma awareness and recovery, she said that forgiveness opens the heart of the victim to communicate with God. Forgiveness refocuses the mind and the heart of the victims on their journey to healing. It softens the heart of the victims to receive God's loving mercy and healing. It releases the need and desire to revenge, releases the victim from the responsibility of administering judgment, and allows for renewed hope, opens the heart to receive healing and love, and renews the ability to trust. It creates the ability to choose a different response than anger, pain, fear, and revenge. I think that was me. But that light in my heart did not stop with healing and forgiveness. I saw that there was a great work to do. I saw that my country needed healing and reconciliation. I started then to dream of the Ministry of Trauma Healing and Reconciliation Services, which focuses on promoting mental health through active listening and treating the past with psychosocial approaches, including the Alternative to Violence program. I have been working to bring this dream into a reality since that time. It has not been easy, and I know the work is still very immense. Talking about mental health, I'm told that according to the World Health Organization, the mental disorders reach almost 12% of the world population. About 450 million people, that is 1 out of 4 persons, will in him or her be affected by a mental disorder that will have to be diagnosed and be treated. In Africa alone, I am told 1 person out of 6 presents a mental disorder. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has created a global crisis for mental health, fueling short and long-term stresses and undermining the mental health of millions. Estimates put the rise in both anxiety and depressive disorders at more than 25% during the first year of the pandemic. At the same time, mental health services have been severely disrupted, and the treatment gap for mental health conditions has widened. No wonder mental health experts all concur that there is no health without mental health. Is this not an ocean of darkness concerning the mental health that needs to be dispelled by the Friends Light? Allow me to challenge ourselves to seek God's leading, to get more committed and engaged in the mental health initiatives. May we pray so that we may discern where the light might be leading us to dispel this darkness. Without any weapon, the light led Richard Gush to face the warriors. The light guided him, and he was able to have a conversation with them, and he dispelled the darkness. I cannot imagine the level of traumatization that could have occurred if these ferocious warriors had committed the massacre on that day. But Richard Gush stopped it. As we seek to understand where the light is leading us, let us note that it's not sufficient to be led by the light. What matters more is to actively engage in things to which we are being led. Please consider what George Fox told his followers. According to the Quaker Faith and Practice, I believe in chapter 19, and I think it's verse 32, it said that, and this is the word of the Lord to you all, in the charge to you all, in the presence of the living God, be patterns, be examples, that your courage and life may preach among all sorts of people and to them. Then you will come to work cheerfully over the world, answering that of God in everyone. Of course, we friends of the light are called to let our light shine in order to answer that of God in every human being, regardless of his her ethnic, social, or tribal backgrounds. Answering that of God in every human being is an intentional response, and I want you to underline response, to the needs of our communities. That is the Ubuntu. As Isaac Pennington said, our life is love and peace and tenderness and bearing one with another and forgiving one another and not carrying accusations one against another, but praying one for another and helping one another and with a tender hand. In the internally displaced people's camp in Ruhororo, Burundi, a Tutsi lady heard about a mob preparing to go and attack a nearby village and loot it. And this mob was a mob of young Tutsis, and the village was a village which was predominantly a Hutu village. And she was, of course, a member of the local Friends Church in the area. Although it was very dangerous of her to try and intervene, she decided to go very quickly and tell the Hutu people to run away and hide. The people listened to her and crossed over the river to another side. And when the killers attacked the village, they were surprised to find it empty. I'm sure in her way, she shone the light and dispelled the ethnic darkness and prevented atrocity. She transcended the Hutu-Tutsi hatred and did not allow the shedding of blood in that village. And I know I can go on and on with many stories like this, and not only in my country, but also in many other countries where friends applied the Ubuntu and dispelled the darkness. Some years ago, there was a wonderful march in Bujumbura. Dozens of Burundians decided to go out on the streets, and these were mostly lawyers, and they were protesting what they called the non-existence of justice in that country. And they took to the streets of Bujumbura with torches and kerosene lamps and flashlights. And lawyers were, of course, wearing their long black judicial robes. They told the journalists that they were in search of justice. They walked down the streets, pretending that they were in total darkness, looking this way and that way, calling out for justice, although it was a sunny, bright Bujumbura day. They made a great point before the riot police scattered them. They didn't wait for the light of justice to come. They presumably were looking for it. This is like a time when friends can stand up and look for Ubuntu and say, where is it? Where is it? We don't need to wait for it to come to us, but we can go for it. Sometimes we must take ourselves out into the public places and advocate for justice and promote and contribute to what can dispel the darkness, even if we may face opposition. Like the Hebrew children, we must follow our pillar of light wherever it leads us. And like the Hebrew children, sometimes we have to start in the very place of our despair or in our captivity. And our captivity could be a community in which we live that has been discriminated and deprived of justice, or where the human rights are violated continuously. We must seek to be led by the light to where the situation seems most hopeless. If you follow the light, it will take you to places you never dreamed of, but you must follow it. Light, as we all know, is indispensable in today's life. It makes a difference, and transforms darkness into a comfortable place to be. In this country, of course, in other developed countries, we owe much gratitude to Thomas Edison, who invented the light on October 22nd, 1879. I was told that he made several attempts before he got the right glowing filament, and I can almost hear his excitement for his invention as he proclaimed, "We will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles." In Burundi, very many villages, such as those belonging to the Twa, one of the ethnic groups in Burundi, still use the fire kitchen as their only source of light at night. As a result, there are many stories ranging from snakes and thieves getting into the bedroom without anyone noticing, to a mother getting food from her cooking pot and putting it on the ground because she did not see the plate. Hence, a proverb in Kirundi that says, "Uwufise urumuri ntiyarurira hasi," which means there's a strong emphasis on the importance of the light for guidance in daily life. Being led by the light is an active, deliberate, and intentional lifestyle. We call it the testimony in the Quaker cycles. And this is defined as the public witness of an inward faith of both individual and community. It is the consequence of one's relationship to God and the outworking of that relationship in one's life. To this lifestyle, this is what George Fox said: "Be patterns, be examples in all countries, places, inlands, nations, wherever you come, that your courage and life may preach among all sorts of people, and to them, then you will come to walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of God in everyone. Thereby in them you may be a blessing and make the witness of God in them to bless you." This is what I call faith in action. This lifestyle has to have visible actions that make a difference to those around us, the Ubuntu. It is what we must be and do. This light is action-oriented, just like a torch or flashlight. It must be oriented towards those things, and I'm quoting, "things which were hurtful without were within, in the hearts and minds of wicked men," which Fox saw in 1647, so that transformation may take place. This transformation also concerns us in the sense that we are called to imitate Richard Gush and become more caring, loving, forgiving, and compassionate as the children of light. This is possible when we have a concern or a burden to those in difficult situations. We must have a concern to make a difference. And the word concern wrote Harvey Gilman in a light that is shining, and this is what he said: "Concern has a more powerful meaning among Quakers. It refers to a religious compulsion to act in a certain way based on a leading of the Spirit. And early Quakers left home and family under concern to preach the truth as they saw it, just as Mary Fisher had a concern to speak to the Sultan, or Elizabeth Fry to improve the condition of prisoners in Newgate Prison. Similarly, one could say that John Woolman had a concern about the possession of and selling of slaves and felt compelled to act accordingly to dictates of the light within him. Do we have a concern? Christ challenged his hearers that no sensible person would light a lamp and cover it with a basket. Instead, he or she is led by it. We may have baskets that cover our lights. Those may be good things such as our wealth, our health, and our education. We may have our own reasoning that there is nothing I can do for them. And the baskets that we cover our lights could be our excuses that I do not know their culture or their language. I do not want to create dependency in them. Or we may say, oh, it will not make any difference anyway, etc. and etc. But I have found that as the light leads me, all my excuses fall away. I have seen many friends travel to other places where there is service, where their services are needed. Without language skills, they've spent their own resources, they've made cultural mistakes, and then learned, and then tried again to reach out and connect to the communities that needed help. I have found that I have no excuses good enough to keep me from God's work as led by the light. Let us conclude as we started. As we started by reading in the book of Isaiah, I think it is sensible to end our lecture with the same book, especially because Isaiah gives us a hint on our attitude as people of the light. That is, those who are led by the light. In chapter 60, verse 2 and 3, we can conclude, darkness now covers the earth, and the people are in darkness. But the Lord will shine on you, and his glory will appear over you. Then the nations will come to your light. Let us be led by the light in our world. Let us pay attention to the light. Let us listen to God's leading. Let us pray to discern how and where the light might be leading us. It does not matter whether the light leads us in our own neighborhood or in the interior of our continent or even outside our continent. But of course, this requires a certain discipline, a behavior or attitude, or simply an effort on our part and an intentional commitment to shine. We are to allow God to shine on us, and the way we do this is practicing this very thing that Mary Young, in her devotional book, which she called Jesus Calling, she says, as you rest quietly in my presence, my light within you grows brighter and brighter. Let us take time to rest quietly in God's presence so that God's light within us may grow brighter and brighter. Thank you.